So today we have the year-end show. We do numbers. We prognosticate about 2015. And we have a guest in the show today. He's not just a guest anymore. He's become the co-host of the Real Estate Revolution. We have Fred. Fred.
I don't want to be prognosticated.
You don't want to be
It sounds like it hurts.
Anyway, Fred, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Fred Johnson with Duke Warner Realty.
Thank you. Before we get too far into the show, I want to wish my wife a happy anniversary. Today's my wedding anniversary, number 7. How have you lasted so many years with me?
Happy anniversary back at ya.
No answer to that question.
You're going
to jump right over that. Right. That's probably why. That's why we've made it 7 years, folks. She doesn't take the bait.
Congratulations.
So anyway, being married 7 years has been wonderful. My wife and partner in the business for many, many years. We've had a pretty good run. So thanks for everything so far. And let's get into 2015, wife.
Thank you also, husband. Let's do it.
All right. So enough of that mushy stuff. We have a really amazing show for you today. We are going to look at numbers backwards and forwards for the last year. There's some really revealing data in these numbers. As much as I feel like I've got my finger on the pulse of what's going on in Central Oregon, and particularly here in Bend in the market, some of these numbers were really surprising to me, and so it'll be an interesting conversation. You can always reach us here at the studio at 541-388-1110 if you're interested in joining the show. You have some questions or some comments. You want to say Fred's full of crap? That's great.
Hey.
Anyway, before we get into the numbers, let's look at what's going on here in Central Oregon. Happy holidays to you all, and hope you had a great Christmas, and looking forward to the new year and staying safe in the new year. There's still lots of activities going on here in Central Oregon. Up at the mountain, it's today obviously a nice cold day. Reminds us that we are a ski resort town. There's 35 inches at the base at Mount Bachelor, 120 total snowfall, and they're showing good conditions to be out there skiing. I'm surprised that you're doing the show with me today.
It's a wonderful day out there.
Yeah.
Wonderful day. Every restaurant in town's full.
Yeah, there you go. So get up to the mountain and enjoy. One of the reasons that we live here in Central Oregon. There's holiday carriage rides down at the Old Mill District. They start at 2 o'clock this afternoon, do Saturdays and Sundays, and this is a perfect day for that. I mean, other than not being able to see the mountains because it's a little overcast, it's nice and cold. You can wrap up in that blanket and tootle around the Old Mill District. It's kind of a fun, Central Oregon Bend thing to do. There's lots of live music going on here in town. There's Elvis Never Forgotten Tour, starts at 7 p.m. at the Tower Theater, downtown Wall Street. There's also Ben Broadband's Jazz at the Oxford Hotel, starts at 8 p.m. tonight. Live music with Electropod, that's at the Volcanic Theater and Pub, starts at 9 p.m. So there's lots of live music going on tonight. So when you're done skiing, go down there and enjoy some really great live music. Also, there is the last Saturday art walk in the old Ironworks Art District. That's at 50 Southeast Scott Street. Get down there and check out the artworks that are going on. As far as hot properties, I am going to do a lot of shameless plugging, and if you got some shameless plugs, you're more than welcome to jump in if you got anything that you want to bring, to the top of the mind awareness for folks here at the end of the year. But I've got a subdivision up in Redmond, in Nilasha subdivision. Our first home is going to be complete at the end of February, and it is our 1,954 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath home. And tile floors, granite countertops, hand-textured walls, and ceiling. Very, very nice home, and especially for the price point. It's marketing for $214,900. And that subdivision that we have going, our model home, official model home, will be done about at the end of February, and that'll be our 2,400 or 2,300 square foot 4-bedroom. And actually, this is a lot of flex space in this home. Master's on the main. You can have 3 bedrooms upstairs. You could have 2 bedrooms upstairs and an office, 2 bedrooms upstairs and a little family room, or and you can add a Jack and Jill between 2 of the bedrooms upstairs. So there's a lots of flexibility in this floor plan to accommodate all the different needs for folks. And that one will be retailing at $250,000 with granite countertops, tile flooring, laminate down, and so very good values in this subdivision. We've got about 20 homes to sell in that subdivision, so I wanted to give everybody a New Year's kind of pop. We're ready to start touring people through one of the homes here at the end of February or at the end of January. Do you have any homes that you want to pop out there?
I'm just really ready to get ready and get on these numbers.
You're
today,
ready
Kip.
to get on the numbers.
You
Okay.
bet.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out the current market numbers for this week, and then we're going to dive after the break into the year-end numbers, which are really interesting. So total number of active BEND properties here today are 620. It's about 4.5 months of inventory. We had 33 new listings this week in the hot period of time. We usually have 90 to 100 a week, when we're popping during the summertime. So 33 is kind of a reflection of just we slow down in the winter, especially in the holidays. And so new construction, there are 201 new construction homes that are on the market. That is 32.4% of all of our active listings right now. And sold so far this year, which we've got only a few days left, so let's just call it year end because this is the last show before we get into 2015. We have a total number of 2,875 sales with an average day on the market of 123 days, average sales price of $345,000, median home sales price here in Bend of $290,000. And new construction was 21% of the total sales this year. We've sold $995 million in gross sales in residential homes here in Bend. If we compare that to 2013, we had 2,924 sales. So down, the sales this year in number of units, we got several, we're down a little bit. 120 days on the market. So, compared to the 123, it's very similar. Average sales price last year was $316, and median sales price this year or last year was $269,000 versus the $290,000 median home sale price this year. We're up in the city of Bend about 6.5-7% overall. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll really dive deep into the numbers. You can reach us at 541-388-1110 if you want to join the show. You're listening to The Real Estate Revolution on FM News 100 1110 KBND. I am Kip Lohr, your host. I'm owner-broker of Lohr Real Estate. Co-host in the show today is
Fred Johnson. Fred Johnson with Duke Warner Realty.
There you
and
go.
I'm happy to be here. Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Great to have you here, Fred. So anyway, this is our numbers year-end show. We're looking at numbers a lot deeper than we do on a weekly basis. And basically what we've done is we've broken down the 4 quadrants of Bend and then picked 4 subdivisions in each one of those quadrants as kind of representatives of kind of micro markets within the micro market within the whole market. And there were some really interesting numbers, weren't there?
There were some wonderful numbers, and I think that when you aggregate these numbers in different manners, it's a way to really get a much clearer picture of how things interact with one another. And one of the first things that I was taken away with was that we heard so much press this year about this year being so robust, when in fact the overall sales were actually lower than they were in the previous year, 2013.
As far as number of sales, yeah,
Total
that's
number
right.
of sales.
Yeah, and honestly, the percentage and increase in value was down by half compared to 2013. So I think people, I ran into the same thing all year, where people were just like, the impression was the market's hot, it's moving, it's shaking, and it's not that it wasn't vigorous.
Yes.
But it certainly wasn't the market of 2013, which was insane. And these numbers this year really bear that out. But there were also some really interesting numbers per quadrant that really, I think, tell a deeper story of what our market's doing, and also I think gives us maybe some tips on what's going to happen next year. And so to put you on notice,
Yes.
Before the end of the show, you and I are going to throw out a few predictions.
Okay.
A little prognostication, even though my wife said she doesn't want to be prognosticated at. We're going to do it anyway. And so first of all, I think you pointed out that 35% of this year's sales happened between the price range of 200 and 300,000. That's pretty phenomenal.
It's a
It's a large number.
Remarkable number, and the way that those break down in the two quadrants between 200 and 250, there were 532 sales this year, and between 250 and 300, there were another 411 sales.
Yeah, that's
the next nearest market was at 262, and that was the next step up between 3 and 350.
Right.
So if you add those three, we have about 1,250 of the total 2,800 sales. 30% of the market is right there in that sector of the market.
Yeah, and what's amazing is if you look at the active sales or active properties that are for sale currently right now, between 120,000 to 200,000, which would be what we would normally consider kind of the first-time homebuyer, price point. I am going to go push that out to 250 here in a minute, 250,000, which is kind of deceiving. At that 250,000 mark, I feel like many first-time home buyers are begging, borrowing, and stealing and stretching out their comfort zone to be able to get into that price range. So, but for between 120 and 200,000 here in Bend, number of active properties only account for 1.5% of the total number of actives. So, in other words, there's there's nothing available in that price point. And if you jump from the $200,000 to $250,000 price point, so if you say we're going to include that next $50,000 in that first-time home buyer, that only adds another 9%. So between below 250,000 available inventory here in Bend is about 10% of the total available properties, which is just, that tells a story all by itself.
Well, that's 100% correct. With the blend, and this is what I was talking about, aggregating the different numbers, that same sector that you said right now, there's currently only 9% of the available inventory is in that sector of the market, is also the same exact price point that equated to 532 sales this last year, which is the lion's share of the activity.
Exactly. So you're looking at, that ends up being about 18% of all the sales this year were in that particular price point. And so, looking into next year, it's difficult for me to think that there's going to be more available homes below that $250,000 price point. Would you agree?
Right. Well, I agree. And just as a comparison, at the upper end of the market here, at the above $600,000 price point, that currently accounts for 25% of the available inventory right now.
Which is just crazy.
Which only equated to a little over 150 total sales all of last year.
Right.
So you can see the inequity in those two differentials there.
I agree. So if you look into, let's just dive into Northwest Bend real quick, and we've only got a few more minutes before we have to go to break, but we can start in the numbers here, and you can always reach us at 541-388-1110 if you want to join the show. If you have any questions about the numbers, like I said, if you want to tell Fred that he's full of crap, I am happy to giggle at you.
Take it easy on
or
Fred.
Tell him that he's just right on spot on. You can tell him he's right on the money. So in Northwest Bend, total number of sales this year were 660. Last year we had 737. So you're already seeing fewer sales this year in Northwest Bend than we saw last year. Average days on the market were about the same, 129 versus 125, so that's not really anything to talk about. You look at average sales price this year is $492,000 versus 468 last year. And then we had median sales price this year in Northwest Bend of $449,000, so darn near close to $450,000 median sales price in Northwest Bend versus $425,000. That's up only 5.5%. in Northwest Bend, that was kind of the first thing that was really kind of surprising to me, is seeing that, the average in Bend was 7.5% overall. And I guess my gut has always been, and maybe I'm just a product of not paying close enough attention, but Northwest Bend I thought would be a little more robust and maybe do better as far as increase in values, and it really didn't, except for one, a couple of glaring exceptions.
That's 100% correct. One of the glaring exceptions was Aubrey Butte, which everybody holds sort of as the bellwether of the activity in the Northwest sector.
That's
it was actually down 8% overall.
I know that I had to rub my eyes and do the numbers 2 or 3 times, going, this can't be right. But down 8% is pretty phenomenal. So, what that means to sellers and buyers in that particular subdivision is that, if you sold last year, you did great. And if you sold this year, your days on the market went up. Days on the market in there last year were 121. The average were 182 this year. Mm-hmm. So the cure was drop in price, and they dropped prices by 8%. What was another one that struck out, jumped out at you here in the Northwest section?
Well, also Aubrey Glen was another one, which is a great gated community. It's very, very popular. It seems that inventory moves through there very, very well.
Yep.
Caters to a particular sector of the market, and it too was down by half a percentage point. Which,
even saying that prices would be flat year over year would be a big surprise to me. But to see these two neighborhoods, one being down 8% and the other one being down 0.5%, was a head scratcher for me. I think the two other neighborhoods in here that really were the drivers to even get the average up to that 5.5% were Northwest Crossing, which was, here again, for me, was a little bit of a surprise. I think when you analyze it a little deeper, the growth in Northwest Crossing makes sense. When you drive by, they're pushing all that dirt and things feel like things are going on in there. But they, I guess on a gut level, I thought, gosh, I don't see that being, taken off the way people are talking about. But it was up 11.5% year over year.
Well, and nearly double the amount of activity,
as far as sales, yeah.
As far as overall sales,
yeah.
Where in the other neighborhoods that we talked about, we had 40 sales per year, and in this neighborhood we have 90 sales per year.
Yep.
There's an awful lot of new construction. New construction is obviously going to be able to push that price point just a little bit.
Yep.
And I think that location of Northwest Crossing fits a wide demographic of potential owners.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that a couple other factors is that you have kind of a walkability in Northwest Crossing, which is what they were shooting for, that I think is becoming more and more popular. As in the other part of, Northwest, the downtown area really had 14% growth year over year as far as prices go. And Northwest Crossing, the other element is that you can buy a home and, new construction under about $650. And I found many folks coming in from out of area where $650 was about their top end, and for folks that wanted to be on the Northwest side, well, you couldn't build something new and be in that price point, and so there was lots of inventory this year that kept them kind of underneath that $650 range.
That's a real interesting anomaly on the west side, if you will, in that and one of the subdivisions we just sort of walked past there was the Skyliner Summit. And Skyliner Summit sort of caters to that larger family,
yep.
Larger home.
Yep.
And if they're trying to keep their price point under that 600 mark and still have a large home that may have 4 or 5 bedrooms to be able to accommodate a family, that's really one of the very few neighborhoods that will accommodate that.
That's very true. So we're going to have to go to break here just in a second, but when we come back, we'll continue breaking down the numbers. Again, if you want to reach us here at the studio, you can reach us at 541-388-1110. And you're listening to The Real Estate Revolution. I'm Kip Lohr, your host. We have Fred Johnson in the house and my lovely wife, married 7 years.
Happy anniversary.
FM News 100, 1110 KBND. Go ahead there,
Fred Johnson here with Duke Warner Realty,
thank you,
and I'm happy to be here.
Happy to be here. So we just got through the Northwest Bend, and what's your just final 2 seconds of takeaway from what's going on and what happened this year in Northwest?
Well, the only thing that I would like to do in the Northwest area is that it seems that the walkability, the livability is really, really important there. In some of the established neighborhoods, we're seeing a little bit of a downswing, and I would think that because our numbers as they're generated through the MLS break Broken Top out as a Southwest property. I don't think that that's really fair because it's really all inclusive in that Northwest area. And
I would agree.
Broken Top 2 was down in sales, 61 to 53, and overall value was actually down 6.5%.
Yep.
So what we're seeing there is we are seeing appreciation downtown close in the walkable area and in some of the smaller homes in the Northwest Crossing area. But really, all in all, the price point is getting to a point to where it's starting to spill over into some of these other neighborhoods.
I would agree with that. And I think if we expand that out to Bend in general, as we're talking about these numbers, it might be useful to have in the back of your minds out there that, we're in some respects, in my opinion, starting to hit a point of unaffordability for each of these areas that are showing, squishing into other areas. So, for instance, folks that would normally be able to afford in Northwest maybe are starting to buy in Southwest, or maybe not buying at all in the Northwest area. If it's somebody coming in from out of area, the affordability there in 2013 was, was the gold rush. People were coming up from California and down from Portland and all areas outside of area, really taking advantage of some new historic low prices in the Northwest section. And I think this year, some of what we're seeing in these different quadrants we're hitting a point of diminishing returns on value, as far as kind of a wall there where that particular area, you have a certain type of buyer that has traditionally looked in these different areas, and we're hitting a threshold in which the affordability is not there anymore. So let's jump into the Southwest section here, which would be kind of a spillover, in my opinion, from the Northwest part of Bend, spills down into the Southwest, because there's still some walkability areas in the Southwest. There's also, you can get on the river trail pretty easily. You got the Old Mill District there. So, solds this year we had 434 sales versus 499 sales last year. So again, the total number of sales is down from last year to this year. Average days on the market about the same, so we're not going to talk too much about that. Average sales price this year of $393,000 versus $340,000, and then we had a median sales price this year in Southwest Bend of $330,000 versus $297,000. So we're up about 10%. So that's a little bit above the average. So whereas Northwest Bend was down above the overall average increase in price, we're up 10%, which is a little bit above that. Are there any of the numbers here in these particular subdivisions that kind of stuck out to you?
Well, actually, what I get here is exactly what you were alluding to, Kip, is that there's a little bit of spillover from that Northwest neighborhood. And what's happening now is going down Brookswood, going down the Southwest on the east bank of the river there, those properties still have access to the river trails. They still have access to the Old Mill District. They've got access to the core area of town, and they can get more house for less money. And so that's the reason why we've seen a fair amount of activity in there this year.
Yeah, and I would say, Deschutes River Woods is kind of one of those neighborhoods in the Southwest that is almost a little section of Bend in of itself, where you don't even necessarily talk about it as being part of any of the quadrants, and it was up 6% year over year. The median sales price in Deschutes River Woods right now is $239,000 versus $223,000 last year, and that would have been one of those traditional areas where it was still kind of affordable to a first-time home buyer, and those are close to acre lots to a little bit over an acre lots down there. So it was people need that extra elbow room, a place to park their toys, their travel trailer. That was going to be a place that was really attractive. Well, we're starting to see the prices start to sneak up in there, and I know I don't know if you noticed, but there were a lot of like old burnout trailer houses down there that builders were buying, at auction this last year and rolling them out of there and building nice new homes with shops on them. So that area really popped.
It's the area in town where there's the least expensive acreage properties, and they're still relatively close to the core area. So as the aggregate prices start to move up, they're going to pull that baseline up with them, which if these are the least expensive acreage properties close to town,
that's right.
As the overall prices start to pull up, they're going to pull that area up a little bit with them, which this year was 6%.
Yep.
About 6%.
Yep.
And if somebody wants to have a shop and somebody wants to park their fishing boat and they might want to have a kennel for their dog, there's not many of those opportunities on the Northwest side.
Yep, that's right. So let's jump over to Northeast real quick. Northeast Bend, we saw a total number of 737 sales this year versus 752 last year. So here again, the number of units are down year over year. Average days on the market about the same. Nothing really to mention there. Let's just get to the median price. We have 249, so right up against that edge of affordability for the first-time home buyer. In median price this year, it was $218,000, which I think is a much more solid. It gets us closer to where that family of four here in Bend median income can afford. Up 14% year over year in Northeast Bend. So we saw kind of a downturn in Northwest and we started seeing people migrate over to the more, some more affordability on the northeast side. Are there any of the subdivisions that that I picked kind of pop open? Any observations that you want to make?
Well, my observation in this area is that this, if you look at the median price point, there being at $250, this is exactly where the bulk of the graph that we had discussed earlier, where 532 sales were.
Yep.
So as the bulk of the market has shifted, this is a community and a section in town where people that are participating in that very active portion of the market can purchase a new home. And I think that's the reason why we're seeing it not necessarily neighborhood specific, but regionally in that northeast section.
Yeah, and I would just say to that, Northeast has a good combination, a good balance between new construction and what would you call existing
homes?
Yeah, existing homes. Used homes. Yeah, used inventory. Tamarack Park, which would have been a 70s vintage, yes. Subdivision. No new construction in that area, was up 17% year over year.
Well, that's because last year it was at $175,000.
Yep.
And that moved to $214,000 on the average this year. So it straddled that $200,000 price point.
Exactly. And then you've got McCall's Landing, which is all brand new construction. That's a great Polish neighborhood that a lot of folks have jumped into. And here again, last year it was like at 209 was the median price in McCall's Landing. And now the median price is right at that edge again of affordability for that first-time home buyer at 200. Well, actually, it's 215, so it's still well within that on that edge. So, and no, I'm sorry, 250. There we go. And so it's that neighborhood was up 16% year over year.
I think that's going to be an interesting neighborhood to watch.
I agree. I think moving forward into 2015, watching the rest of the build out in McCall's Landing and see how prices fare in there over the next year is going to be a really good litmus test for what's going on in the market.
Certainly, because you have the new construction, and we had such a shortage of inventory at the beginning of the year. People would go into contract, and then it'd take 4 months for the home to be built. So
exactly.
It's not really reflective of standing existing inventory and its absorption rate, because it sort of lags behind because of the construction time.
That's exactly right. So let's go to break, and then we've got the southeast section of Bend, and then our prognostication, our little look into the crystal ball. You give a couple of predictions, I'll give a couple of predictions, and then we're done for 2014. I can't believe it. You're listening to the Real Estate Revolution. I am Kip Lohr, your host, and this is FM News 100, 1110 KBND. We've gone through 3 of the 4 quadrants. We made it through Northwest, Northeast, and Southwest. Now we're going to be finally round up with the southeast part of Bend, and then I'm going to put you on the spot to have you make a few predictions. Put your name out there. Put your name on it. 2014 sales in Southeast Bend were 600 sales this year versus 530 last year. This is the only quadrant in Bend that saw an increase in number of units, and a pretty good chunk. That's 70 more sales in northeast part of Bend than we saw last year. Same exact number of days on the market, so nothing to talk about there. When we get to the median home price, this year is $270,000 versus $242 last year. And so that gets us in the southeast part of Bend an average increase of 10% year over year. Any of the neighborhoods here in southeast that jumps out at you that I kind of highlighted?
Yeah, actually 2 of them in this area kind of stand out with me. One obviously is Stonegate, which is a Polish neighborhood building new homes, and they're showing about a 2% uptick there. Which
is really weird to me because, and actually if you look at Sun Meadow, that's up, not down, just to get you there.
Okay.
So the Stonegate, which is a Polish neighborhood where they're continuing new construction, it was only up 2%, which I thought was weird. I thought with just the construction costs, it would go up a little bit more than that, but they're not doing a ton of new building in there either. What was the other one that you saw in there that was kind of interesting to you?
Well, the other one kind of alludes back to our discussion of people having a little bit of elbow room, and that was the Kings Forest neighborhood. Kings Forest neighborhood is an older neighborhood, but they're larger lots with pine trees.
That's right.
And that one shows not only an increase in sales, but also an increase in value of 12.5%.
Yeah, and so I think that for me, the story in these numbers in the different quadrants, obviously the biggest surprise to me was that Northwest didn't do as well as I would have imagined that it would do, with just a 5.5% average increase in value. And then there were some neighborhoods in Northwest that just really did not perform well this year. I think we've alluded to some of the reasons for that. I'm going to let you go ahead and throw out some prognostication, and then we'll banter back a little bit, about that, and then I'll do my own.
Oh, perfect.
So put your name on something, Fred.
At-bat here.
There you go.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to. I'm a little excited about the market and the market trends right now because we don't really have people from outside of the area playing heavily in our market. And by that, I mean we don't have a lot of investors, a lot of speculators, a lot of investors playing in the market. What we're starting to see now is a much greater percentage of owner users.
Yep, I agree with that.
And those owner users are coming not highly leveraged, but they're coming in with some of their own money, so they've got some skin in the game, if you will. So what that says to me for the overall market is that it's a much more stable market. Not near as inclined to, the question that we're constantly asked is the bubble going to burst again?
Yeah.
Well, if they're highly speculative, they don't have any of their own money, it's really easy to walk away. But if they've got a lot of their money in there and there's a devaluation, people aren't going to walk away from that. So it adds to much more stability to the community.
I agree with that.
I think the travesty is that we're seeing that baseline of $200,000 is getting to be the bottom threshold. So for those people that are looking for a home in the $100,000 and $175,000 price range, it looks like Redmond is going to be their next alternative where they're going to be able to.
And it's even tight in Redmond right now.
It certainly is.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do know that we saw quite an increase in Redmond. So, in 2013 and this year. So I think that it's even becoming, not necessarily the haven for the first-time home buyer. Maybe 2015 might be the end of that for Redmond.
Mm-hmm. And as you well know, Kip, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is the large lot homes and the small acreages in close. And my prognostication, if you will, for this year is that we're going to see more activity in that sector of the market. I think that more and more people are not going to fall into the, if you will, social engineering that we're going to live in a specific house in a small lot in a small neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And now that they're finding with those prices going up that they could have a shop or a barn and an acre or two and a nice home for the same amount of money, that's going to look much more appealing. We'll see much more activity this coming season in that sector of the market. Well,
I would say that's probably that's a good bet.
Well, I'm hopeful.
And yeah. You got anything else you want to add? Or do you want me to run into mine?
Well, let's leave a little time. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, for me, these numbers today really tell a story to me. And you and I have bantered back and forth a little bit off radio about what's going to happen here in Bend once we hit the threshold of the working force. People here that live in the community can't afford to live in the community anymore. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like your leaning has been more on the side of, this is still a very attractive market for people who are coming from other markets that are much more expensive than, even what we have right now. And I think my side of the argument would be that I think we're going to hit some price points, and I think seeing what's happened in Northwest this year, here's my prognostication. I think it's very, very possible that we will see in 2015 some decline in prices in some of these other quadrants following suit of what we saw this year in Northwest. So maybe not overall in say Northeast Bend, we may not see overall a market decline, but I think that we will see some pocket neighborhoods that may see actually a decline in price. And the reason I think that is that when we talked about this morning off air, that in the big boom that we saw last time, we saw a lot of speculation. And so on the east side of town, we saw a lot of the run-up on prices were either speculators or we saw folks that couldn't afford to live in a $325,000 or $330,000 ranch home, 70s vintage ranch on the east side, but they had a loan program that could make it affordable. Well, we don't have the speculators this time, and we don't have the loan products that make it possible. So here's why I think that it's very possible that we're going to see these prices that today, right now, I feel have hit that threshold, and I don't see how they can go higher. And so at very least on the east side, we may see some flattening out, very little, if any, growth in values next year. And we might even in some neighborhoods see some drop in prices. That's my big one for 2015.
There you go. Hit it out of the park.
I'll put my name on it.
Well, and there you go. and I have a tendency to agree with you. During that time of speculation that you're talking about, nearly 35% of the overall market were speculators.
Yep.
People that never had any intention of using the property.
That's right.
So the fact that they're off of the board, I think that that's great. And then I also think that of the vast percentage of that adjustment that you're talking about is going to be in the new construction through inducements, whether it's going to be appliances, backyard landscape, those sort of things. We may see a little bit of movement in the prices, but the overall appreciation, I think it's a good call, Kip.
Well, okay. Well, listen, it was a great year, 2014. I think overall the market was stable. I think we're seeing more stabling forces coming into 2015. I think it's a great market to be in. I think if you're a buyer or seller, you're still in good shape for 2015, and it's been a heck of a ride this year. And I got to say, it's been great to add you to the show. Next year, folks can expect to hear a lot more Fred here on the station, and so thanks for being on the show, man.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, and Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Yeah, Happy New Year to everybody, and again, wife, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Happy New Year, son.